Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's February 7th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And here's a look at our daily chart. You can see we're just kind of chopping sideways. We're not really um, rallying on up. You can see the support along the green line, and we're just really kind of stuck between maybe the midline and the green line looks like now, but we're just kind of working sideways, and we're actually working lower. The last couple of days we're closing a little bit lower, so this just looks like sideways congestion. So maybe we're going to find support here. The buying continues to come in around this level, it looks like. So maybe we'll bounce on out of here. Maybe we'll make another leg up. It's possible that you could draw this trend line like so as well. But even if you do, we did get a close outside of it today, so we could just push to a new high still. I'm not convinced this is the channel. I know we got one here and a break outside. Maybe we'll continue to attempt that retest of the high. Maybe we'll make another leg up. Who knows? Maybe there is a different trend line out here. We just don't have enough data to show us that yet. So we'll continue to look at this. But that's what I'm seeing of now, just sideways stuff. So let's switch over to the daily chart, or I'm sorry, to the intraday chart. Okay, here's a look at the 2000 tick intraday chart, and you can see it's just a range day. Once we made this failed break higher up here late this afternoon, man, this thing rocketed down. So if you could have got in that, maybe you get a good move down here. Then, of course, we break out the lower side and failed. Now we're headed back. And before we actually go higher, this is kind of what you would expect to see, a failed break out the low side. So we're trending higher now. That channel looks like it's still in play. Of course, we're into the next day. Everything can change now. So, but that's how I see it for today. We spent most of the morning in the upper half. Then we broke down into the lower half, only to get back up in this upper half and continue to test this resistance area here. And both times we broke lower, we failed instantly and traded all the way to the other side. So that's how I see it. There's still a few there's a lot of green ones in there. I just went ahead and marked them. There's not a lot of red or blue trades, so I just marked the green ones that I saw that were a possibility, and I'll talk about them briefly, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because it's late and I want to get this up. So let's zoom in, go through the trades, and wrap today up. Obviously, we had this trend up here in the early morning. 7 o'clock came somewhere in this move up, and then we get the first break of this yellow channel. We get a first entry and then a second entry right here. Technically, there may be a second entry here, but this looks like one leg down, a little two-legged correction, a second leg down. So I'm still going to count this as a second entry. This probably broke. I'm pretty sure this broke lower and went higher. But if it broke higher and turned down, then technically this is a second entry. But by the way we count, this would be a second entry when we broke higher. But I'd wait for this bar to close, and if you do, you see obviously that you probably don't want to enter there. You wouldn't want to enter there long anyway on a second entry that far away from the EMA, because this is what happens. You expect another leg down. So now you got two legs of correction, a nice signal bar. Just go long there trying to get a retest of the highs. Doesn't end up happening on that move, but we end up just kind of working sideways. And notice we make a double top here, so that's like a new high, and then you try to go higher once. You break out the low side. Again, we've already broke out here once, and you get this failed second entry long, big bearish bar. I like that one. It takes it a minute to get going, but if you take that trade, it's a winner. Now you pretty much got two legs down. We actually got a little more than two legs there, as you can see. And it bounces. And then, of course, you get a first entry, and you get a second entry here, but that's too congested. And you see what happens. It fails and comes back. You could look at that maybe as a triple test. I was a little hesitant on if you saw that. Notice we tested it once, and then we tested it. We went We went higher, came back down, tested it again. It's a little convoluted. It really looks more like a failed second entry short, but you're not really looking for that here, and you've already got 2 legs up. But there's some reasons to maybe consider that one. I didn't mark it. I think you were better to wait for a true triple test, which comes here. And then again, I still didn't mark it because this is inside this channel working down. There's too big a chance it breaks lower. And then really, the higher lows, the better play. And by the time you get it, you're going long right into this, and you see what happens. You get trapped, and then you get a triple test for a short up here. You had to trade this on an engulfing bar. I think it actually broke lower and then came back up and then turned back down. So it was real convoluted. I don't think I would wait and go short here, but when it went back out this other side, 1 tick below that, maybe you go short there, or maybe you even drop a limit order a little further back and try to get a better entry. Runs down, fails out the low side and rallies, then fails out, then runs out the top and fails. There is a second entry short right here. Again, I didn't mark this one because generally you wait on a lower high, but you might have looked at this as a first entry and then a second entry that failed, and it is a second entry short, and it is off the resistance up here, although we made a slightly higher high. So we could push up one more leg. I didn't mark this one, but it's another one you could argue. There's a bunch of these in here you could argue to be green today. And then, of course, we run down, get a first entry. You get a second entry here, but don't take that trade. We just came off the high, so we're looking for prices to probably go lower. And they just kind of chop around in here before they finally break lower. And I just don't see a good trade, short or long, in that little range right there. And of course, we run down on this trend channel, this little micro trend channel. And somebody asked me today, what's a micro trend channel? Because they didn't see anything in the manual about it. You play this the same way you play any other channel. You wait for a break and a new low, and then it goes higher. Sometimes you notice this one. You get a break, new high. It ends up making another leg up before it goes lower. But they tend to play out just like any other channel. They're not as, I mean, sometimes the more dominant pattern, maybe sometimes this resistance might keep it from pushing higher if it was trending up right into that and you get the break. But for the most part, these play out just like the rest of them. So for that reason, we weren't really looking for a long here, although we got a little double bottom, and you could look at that as a failed second entry short reversal type. But notice the new low, and you get a first entry, second entry, bounces right off the EMA, but really it looks like we just kind of got back in the range right there. And it's actually a tad higher, and you can see you bounced off of it again. But you do have a double test of this with a failure, so if it breaks higher, you got room to get out. Maybe you take that trade. Again, it's a little aggressive. But we run up here and we fail on the outside. You get a lower high, and this one breaks higher and turns down. Again, there's a new low here, so that's a first entry, second entry on a failed breakout. This looks a little congested here, but you would expect that being that far away from the EMA, so maybe you still risk that trade. And if you do, you get a runner on it. And somebody today made a comment to me in an email. He says, you know, you're talking about us getting a runner, but how do you know we're going to get a runner? Well, I don't know. But if prices on a trade where you could get a runner, you trade it and you hope you get one, but you never know if you're going to get a runner. I wish I did know for sure. Sometimes I have a good idea, but most of the time when I'm guessing, I'm usually wrong. If I think we're not going to get one, we get one. If I think we are going to get one, we don't get one. So if we're trending, hold a runner every time. If you're to the point where you can trade, if you can only trade 3 contracts where you're doing, or you can only trade 2 contracts where you're 1 and 1, just scalp out. Really wait until you can trade at least 3 contracts so that you get more scalps than you do runners, and your math will work a little better. Honestly, I'd rather be able to trade 4 and scalp out 3 and hold 1 for a runner, or 5 and scalp out 4 and hold 1 for a runner. Your math really works better that way, and then when you do catch a runner, it's a big deal. But when you can only do 1 or 2 contracts, just scalp out most likely. So I think you'll come out better that way. But anyway, you get the failed breakout here. It pretty much looks like it confirms that trend line. It's a second entry short. A lot of reasons to like that trade right there. So I like that one. I can't remember if I talked. I think I skipped that one. Okay, I'm sorry, I had a little interruption there. Had a second entry short here. You got to move down. First entry, second entry. I marked this one green, but you could argue this is borderline being red. The only reason I marked it green is because we had the former support right there. We did push through a little bit, but there was a chance we could bounce right across there again, and you need room. I think there's room there, but just be careful with that one. And then of course we make another new low, and then you get another first entry, second entry, and this one looks like it's off the key entry point. And this is a failed breakout. It's a triple. Actually, you got a triple test with a little fake out there. This is all still part of the same move though. So it's really a triple test. It's a second entry short. It kind of confirms that trend line. It's kind of hard to say yet because it could have been a little lower, and maybe that's the first break. But in the end, I think that's the trend line working down there, and you get the break here. So a lot of reasons to like that one. And then you drop down, you get a first entry, and then you pull back, and you get a second entry, and it fails, and it's also a pullback to test the breakout area. Nice signal bar. It's a little bit congested, but I think that trade's worth taking because you've got one leg. And you don't quite have a second leg down, so you still got a lot of room right there. There's a lower high here. I didn't mark yet because we should have dropped on down there, and the fact we didn't means we could bounce here at the midline and go higher. So again, if you took that one, it probably works, and you could probably argue for it to be green. There's just so many green trades today. But then we come back and you get a failed breakout. But I didn't like this one because you got the yellow channel working up, and maybe that's a close outside, but that's not very convincing, and it's just a first entry. And by the time you get anything else, you're way down here, and there is a failure here, but look how congested. That's definitely congestion. It's right at that midline. Prices could get back above it, and I just, again, you're probably looking for a second leg down, but it's just not a very good setup. And you can see it's actually makes a perfect measured move, bounces off the trend line and takes one more move down. And really right here, what they're doing is you're just going to the other side of the trend channel. And of course it bounces there. And that's why you have to be careful on the second entry here. Of course, there's not a very good setup on this one, so you wouldn't take it. But if you had a nice signal bar there, you got to be careful because you could get trapped here knowing that prices are probably headed here. So we're trending back up. You get a little overshoot. You've already had a break and a new low, so you got to be careful here as well. But with that overshoot, and then you get a break and it tries to go higher, and the trend line kind of holds with that big bearish bar. I like that as a lower high. It's a little more aggressive trade, but I marked it. And then, of course, you start, looks like we may rocket out of here. But, again, this is all too congested. There's something else here too. If you got a keen eye, you might notice this triple test right here. So notice that eye, test it once, you test it twice. Only problem is that's congestion. So, and it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4th entry, but it's that triple test. And this is starting to look like a range. It looks like your support's down here. Let me just go ahead and draw the range. That's kind of how I see it. So, and if you do that, you got plenty of room back. So you might, that's another one that you can argue for it to be green, at least. And then I don't see any reason to take a lower high. It looks like that. And then we finally bounce off the lows. You get a first entry. And it looks like we're going to get a reversal pattern here, but notice how it doesn't break higher. Be careful with that right there, because it'll probably end up breaking out this side and failing and then going higher. And that's what happens. And look at that reversal bar. It actually breaks lower, turns up. I don't know if I would, you might go long on a buy stop right there. Probably better to wait on this bar to close to make sure it's a true reversal, because when that closes like that, you're going to get some follow through, and you can see how they ran all the stops right there. There's all these shorts and got to exit, and people that probably got short here have to exit. And so, again, I marked it green. It's a little aggressive. This is a spike, and we kind of go into a two-tiered channel here, this cayenne color here. And at this point, we're still playing this channel, but notice the new high, and you get a first entry and then second entry, and that confirms the key entry point. Very nice signal bar. I don't know if I'd go long one tick above that, but you may let it break higher and come back with a limit order a little further in here. And you see you could have gotten filled way on back here, and then it breaks higher. And then you get a first entry, you get a close outside, and you get a second entry, but it looks like we've got something going on here. So with that being a second entry and the first close outside, let's just give this a color so I'll make it green. First close outside that dark green, we're probably going to make a new high. So maybe you take that one. Here's a high or low, but that's an inside bar. Don't take that one if you wanted to enter here. And this one is close to, if you see all of what I just described, you could probably argue for that to be blue. If all you see is a break and a second entry, maybe you wait for something else. And then we run up and make a new high, then you come back first entry and you get another second entry, and it's right off that key entry point. So that's another one that you could argue to be green. I didn't mark it because I thought you need to wait on a high or low here, which comes right here, and it's a fairly good bar, so I like that one. And then you get a failure right here, so if it breaks higher right there, you're probably headed higher again. And at that point, it looks like this is the channel, but when it keeps going and this holds up here, that means we're probably going an equal distance. And if you just drag this out and make this the high in an equal distance, look where it goes to. So that's how you can find these targets ahead of time. So, and there's actually, to me, this looks like one leg up and a second leg up, and we don't quite get that second leg, as you can see, and that's just because we couldn't get past the trend channel line. But you got a leg up, a two-legged correction, and another leg up. So here you get a failed break lower, and so you might take that one. You're probably going to come back to test this breakout area in the EMA, and we could go higher. And we actually bounce and come back. The key here is you have to have room to get out. This is a high or low, and we're back inside the channel, and we just had a failed break lower, so you may get another leg up right here, if nothing else, like this trade, this move. And you see it looked like it was going to be a measured move, and it pushed on higher trying to get this one most likely. So you might have to let this one break higher and drop a limit order and see if it'd come back and get you. I don't know if it would. I wasn't paying much attention by this late in the day. So, but runs up, and then you get a lower high, breaks higher and fails and turns down. You still got, if you got room, it's probably going to come back and test this. It's probably going to come all the way back to test this trend line, because you can clearly see that channel there. So as long as you got room here, you couldn't go short one tick below this bar when it closed, but if you wanted to trade the engulfing bar and be a little more aggressive, you could go short one tick below this bar after it broke higher and turned down. Be careful with those engulfing bars. You really need to know what you're doing though. Drops on down. You get a reversal here, but you can't go short right into the support there. Even though you got a little more room back to the trend line, and unfortunately it just keeps on going. But all these people are getting long here, getting out now. They realize, hey, this is a range, and it just failed probably, and we're probably going lower. And that takes you into 2 o'clock. I didn't see anything else in here going into 2:30, I mean, that I liked. So that's what we saw today. And you can see how many green ones there are. And some of those are, if you see some of the more advanced stuff there, you could argue for them to be blue or green. So a lot of trades today, again, a lot of green ones that you just really could argue for that are not easy to see for everybody. These kind of days are not as easy for most people because you're just constantly chopping around in these little ranges. But clearly you can see we started at the lows, we worked to the highs, and then for a little while we were only working from the midline to the high, the midline to the high, midline, and then finally we failed and we worked to the bottom. and then we worked right back to the top. So we're either working from the bottom to the top, or we're working on one from the uh, support resistance to the midline, one of the two. And that's generally how ranges work. And if you get a trend in there within them, let's give this one a little color, just make it gray, just to make it easier to see. And if you understand what prices are doing, then it's just about finding the timing and the setup. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We're right at 20 minutes. That's where I like to keep it. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.